I don't really have any personal connection to Wario as a character. I think the first time I saw and recognized him was in that one E3 trailer for Brawl, where he crashes his motorcycle and fucking dies. It's due to this lack of experience with the character that I always ignored his games, the Wario Land series. Maybe it's because, as a kid at least, his iconic nature wasn't embedded into my brain yet. You look at Mario and Sonic, it can easily attach yourself to them, especially since the entry gate for their games is so wide and they're fucking everywhere. There's almost always a new Mario or Sonic game coming out, but the last Wario Land game came out in 2008. After that, Nintendo decided the best route for Wario was WarioWare, which is how a lot of people were introduced to the character. You know, besides the Mario spin-offs. I'm only explaining this because I'm about to talk about the entire series of Wario Land games. I've never played these games all the way through until now. I've never seen anyone look at them with the level of critique and analysis I think they deserve. This is sorta odd considering how much this franchise has achieved a cult classic status, especially in recent years. It's not like Mario or Sonic where, mostly Sonic, where my own nostalgic bias will come out when discussing the games, and that's not to say Wario Land is cut and dry. There's a lot to talk about with the franchise, and I think this shit is interesting, so I'm gonna talk about it. Oh, and this isn't my be-all end-all opinion piece, by the way. This is literally my first time playing them all the way through, so I imagine my thoughts on them will change over time. I just play a lot of video games and have a lot of shit to say about stuff like this. Usually there's no reason to bring this up. You'd think no one would be an elitist about Wario. But Jesus Christ, there's a 600-page novel about Wario Land 4, where the dude literally proclaims that it's the most deep and comprehensive piece of writing ever written about a video game. Take your head out of your ass, you're talking about a Game Boy game! The first game in the franchise was actually created as a response to the Mario Land series, hence the name Wario Land, Mario Land 3, which is a shitty name. Should've named Knuckles Chaotix, Knuckles the Echidna, Sonic 4. Nah, but I get it. Mario Land 1 and 2 sold crazy well, so they probably didn't want to stagnate creatively. Why not create a new franchise by making it part of an already existing successful one? I mean, it sorta makes sense. Wario is the villain of Mario Land 2 and everything. This is the guy that came up with Wario, by the way. He wanted him to be like the Bluto to Mario's Popeye. Wario's design is even directly based on Bluto. And this, like, weirdo from Pinocchio or something. Hiroji Kiyotake. He also directed the game, Mario Land 2 and Wario Land. He co-directed Wario Land with Takehiko Hosokawa, who did work for Metroid Fusion. He also did work for Other M, which is,
Remember me? Me?
I never played it. I played 2 seconds of Metroid Prime and got a headache, so maybe those games just aren't for me. Hosokawa is actually a huge Metroid guy, working on almost every major entry minus the Prime series. These two worked on Wario pretty closely together with a Hirofumi Matsuoka until Wario Land 4, which is kind of a shame. None of them worked on Shake It, even in advising roles. Maybe that's why that game's only okay, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I feel like Kiyotake specifically could have had a great future as a games director, since the games he directed ended up being grouped with my favorites. But the guy seems like more of an artist. Yeah, even looks like Wario. Oh, that's cute. It's like the Mario Land 2 save room. You know, this game is sort of a lot like Mario Land 2. The save rooms look the same, get to run around our little world map, Mario and Wario get weird hats. Maybe it's just because these games share a director, or maybe it's because they wanted players jumping from Mario Land 2 to feel comfortable, but it's a little odd. I mean, there's enough differences between them, of course, specifically with how the characters operate, but these similarities even cross over into the plot of the game. I can't say with assurance why. There isn't a lot of information about Wario Land 1 in terms of, like, interviews and shit, or any of the Wario Land games for that matter. What I do know is, I like this game. Wario's moveset is pretty unique from Mario's. You're not just running and jumping. In fact, Wario can't run at all, at least not in this game. His top speed is reached when doing a shoulder bash, which can break through blocks and walls. This makes it your primary mobility option and offensive option. You got these cool hat-based power-ups that let you fly forward, stick to walls, blow fire. You can also pick things up like enemies and throw them, which is mostly used for bosses in this game, but becomes a core mechanic in puzzle solving and platforming in future entries.
Really? Oh wait.
There's some pretty fun optional goodies you can get with the hats, like traveling underneath the conveyor by sticking to the bottom of it to get extra coins, or blowing out blocks with fire to reach a secret area underwater. This is a Game Boy game, so I can trust I don't need my character's moveset to be all that fancy for me to have fun. But it thankfully isn't too simplistic to the point where it's uninventive or unimaginative. It strikes a good balance. This isn't fucking Donkey Kong. And I don't mean Donkey Kong for arcades, or Donkey Kong 64. I mean Donkey Kong for Game Boy. Have you fucking seen this shit? Mario's got fucking handstands, fucking triple jump, side flips, swinging around like a monkey. I played this shit without knowing any of that. I just played it like normal Donkey Kong. After you beat the original Donkey Kong stages, the game turns into this really fucking awesome puzzle platformer where you have to utilize your crazy moveset to get around, and it's fun. But I don't need that shit in Wario. The closest thing Wario has is this weird super jump you can perform by holding up while you jump, which isn't conveyed very well. I found myself doing it on accident a lot of the time, and it took me a while to figure out how to do it on purpose, but it's a pretty useful move. It ended up being the way I jumped all the time. There's no visual indicator for a super jump, which is a little strange, but it isn't hard to tell when you did it right, so it's not that big of a deal. Like I mentioned before, this game is structured almost exactly like Mario Land 2, in which you traverse a world map from level to level. Oddly enough, they took the ability to freely pick what level you want to play out in this game, which isn't so bad. It makes the world map purely flavorful, which is fine. They would eventually integrate open level progression back into the franchise by Wario Land 4, and it works great in that game, but again, I think it being a purely aesthetic choice here works fine. Some of this stuff looks pretty uncharacteristic of the game though. This mountain here looks like something out of fucking Adventure Time, and it's gonna come alive and sing some gay song to me. There's only 40 courses in this game spread across 7 worlds, and while that kinda sounds like a lot, they're pretty short. I beat this shit in like 5 hours. Mario 1 has like 32 levels, and you only end up playing like 9 of them, and that shit takes 5 minutes.
What?
The level progression in this game is kinda lame. I mean, it's cool to have a world map and everything. It gives context to these levels I'm jumping around in. Since the game's on Game Boy though, I'm assuming there was some limitation to the artistic conveyance of each area, so they could only really give you a rough idea of where you're at. Hey, wait, that doesn't make any sense. Fucking Mario Land 2 does it perfectly! All the areas on the map in that game convey the level you're about to play in a really fitting way while also looking pretty damn cool. Like in this Halloween zone, you can see coffins next to the level point on the map, and once you jump in, you're in a graveyard. Or in this underwater zone where you travel inside the sunken submarine on the map. It isn't purely flavorful like in Wario Land 1. That isn't to say Wario Land 1 doesn't have this either, but it's definitely more uninspired. Where Mario Land 2's world map prioritized contextualizing and connecting the levels to its set piece, Wario Land 1 only contextualizes the area. Sometimes the levels don't even feel like they belong in the world I'm in, like in this mountain area or in the woods. None of the set pieces are as extravagant, memorable, or as interesting as Mario Land. Like, I see this big tree. I get it. I'm climbing a big tree. There's a whole part in that game where you're climbing up a big Mario toy, platforming through its inner workings until you get to the top, and then holy shit, I'm in fucking space! Isn't that why Wario wanted to take over this shit in the first place? Cause it's fucking cool? Look at him running around like a turkey up there. He's fucking excited! In Wario Land, I'm just kinda dicking around on the beach. Where even am I? Is this supposed to be Mario Land? Where's all the cool shit? Is this Wario's Land? I'm not trying to say that I think this game doesn't look nice or has no interesting locales, but they're definitely a step down from its predecessor. I guess that makes it a bit more subdued, but for a self-proclaimed sequel, it definitely tones it down on the intrigue. Nah, maybe Wario's just a traditional kind of guy. Like, goes fishing with his son on the weekends. At least they got this shit right in Mario Land 4. That game doesn't even have a world map. Look at Donkey Kong. Look at Donkey Kong. Look at Donkey Kong. Something Wario Land 1 doesn't slack on is the boss department. They're all pretty great. To me, the mark of a great boss on a platformer is how much freedom you have in defeating it. The first boss in this game has his weak spot on his belly, and they want you to figure out a way to hit him while dealing with his movements. How I ended up doing it was shoulder bashing into him, waiting for him to float above me, and then reacting by jumping on his weak spot. These two actions both count as hits, but there's an even faster way of doing it I didn't even think of until I reviewed my footage. When he's floating up, you can jump directly onto his belly, and that counts for a hit. Then you can shoulder bash into him once he lands, and he's just done. This makes it like a 20-second boss in execution, but it's done in a really clever way. In hindsight, the fun of these bosses is learning how to deal with their patterns and realizing how I can extend my damage. I fucking hate platformer bosses that only let you hit them when they want. Not that the game controlling the pace of the fight is a bad thing, but it's often done in a really arbitrary way in most platformers. Even the final boss in this game allows you to extend your hits. You can jump on and off the platform you make for yourself multiple times, and I fucking love that shit. I think there was only really one boss that frustrated me, and it was this ghost guy, but I was being a little stupid while I was fighting him. You're supposed to grab the little ghost babies he chucks at you and chuck them back, but I kept getting stunned when he touched me because I was bad at recognizing his movement pattern. It also didn't help that the background is this puke nightmare. What is this shit? There's another really great boss, this bull dude. This whole thing is that he keeps grabbing you and trying to toss you into the lava, and you can't do any real damage to him by shoulder bashing or jumping on him. Eventually, you get so fed up that you end up wanting to toss him in the lava too, and that ends up being the solution. Like I mentioned before, the final boss is also really cool.
Look at the flick of the finger.
There's this lamp you have to throw in order to create a platform that rises up, allowing you to jump on his head and do damage. If you're quick enough, you can jump back onto the platform and hit him again. Eventually, the platform becomes an enemy you have to deal with, so you have to manage where you're throwing the lamp to create platforms, how fast you're going to be on attacking him, and where the enemy is going to end up for you to deal with. All the while, this fat genie motherfucker is flicking his fingers and shooting fireballs that travel on the floor at you. It's a great high-octane boss, and it's fucking awesome. Probably the highlight of the game, actually. It's kind of a shame boss design takes a backseat in the later games, barring Wario Land 4. They aren't overly complicated, but the design loop of learning their patterns and expanding upon damage is really fun, especially in tandem with Wario's moveset. The later games just kinda have you hit them. It can even feel like an afterthought. Some of them are even downright infuriating or conveyed horribly. They had a lot of room to express themselves with these bosses, which is evident not only with the way they're designed, but how they're programmed too, which is charming as fuck. The levels themselves are often structured as straight shots to the end, with secrets being housed in hard-to-reach areas in the rare, openly designed section. There's this really cool level early on where this thwomp is chasing you through a corridor, and you need to shoulder bash your way through before it crushes you. Once you get to the end of said corridor, it seems like there's no way to go until the thwomp finally catches up to you. You end up having to hitch a ride on top of it while dodging these bat dudes, and the game keeps enticing you with difficult to grab power-ups. It's a really cool, difficult, and memorable section. Kinda reminded me of something someone would make on Mario Maker. I sorta wish it was later in the game though, it's kinda hard. I think this game's level design really shines during its reaction-based sections. One of my favorite levels is Course 36. There's a section in this level where these spiked balls fall from the ceiling and start rolling towards you. Luckily there are these holes in the ground you can duck into to avoid getting hurt. If your reaction time is off and you miss ducking into the hole, you can always jump over them. It's a pretty simplistically designed challenge, but there are even more ways to avoid getting hurt than just that. If you have the Viking hat, you can stick to the ceiling here and have the spiked balls roll under you until it's clear to cross. If you have the flight hat, I imagine you would be able to fly forward at the peak of your jump to go over them, which is a faster option, but I don't have footage of this. This whole section makes me wish more parts of the game were designed like this. The game's more open moments feel a little directionless. Level design takes more of a forefront in the series' next game, but this game's simplicity gives it an interesting amount of depth that's hard to replicate without the specific hardware limitations the team were dealing with. There's a lot of things to this game that I could talk about despite it being a pretty short Game Boy game. For example, Wario wears a safari hat in this game instead of his signature yellow brim, which gives me an excuse to talk about the best puzzle game of all time, Picross! Or Picross! Everyone's fucking heard of Picross, but no one knows how to play this shit. I used to not care about Picross until my friend brought it up to me and said, "Hey, you know how to play this shit?" And he explained that shit to me. It's pretty simple, but without boring you with the details, you essentially cross-examine numbers to dictate where tiles are hiding to make little pictures like cats and shit. The first two on the Game Boy are fucking perfect games. The second one even has you traveling these cool little overworlds. They didn't have to do this shit at all and could have easily just made it a level select grid like in the first game, but god damn it, they gave a shit. Why am I even talking about this? Because Wario is in Picross 2, and he has the safari hat from Wario Land. Were you even paying attention? Wario's mode is kinda interesting. Instead of the game deducting time for making a mistake, the timer counts up and the game hides your mistakes from you. It's more of a time trial to see how quick you can solve a puzzle with no help. This shit gets really complicated later on, and eventually you're solving 4 puzzles at once to create this really intricate piece of art. I doubt we'll ever get another Mario Picross game, which is kind of a damn shame. The company behind these games, Jupiter, exclusively makes Picross games, and right now they're dedicated to their Picross S series, which has zero flavor. Like, yeah, it's Picross, but why's it gotta look like this? Picross DS had something going for it, why'd they throw it out for this flat look? What's a guy gotta do to get a AAA Picross game with Mario in it again? There's Picross 3D, which was made by HAL Laboratory, but I don't know, I could never get into it the same way as normal Picross. This shit requires like an elevated level of consciousness. I was interested in this game called Murder by Numbers, which has this cool gameplay premise of finding evidence to crimes through completing Picross puzzles, but the Steam reviews kinda turned me off to it, plus the art style isn't the greatest. Hey, where's my Mario and Sonic's Picross? Put Sonic in there, have him discover some fucking pyramid scrawlings with Mario. Give him a fucking safari hat. Mario Picross X? See classic video game characters such as Link, Mario, Sonic, Kirby, or even Jet Set Willy? This shit isn't real. Look at this fucking commercial for Mario Picross. Look at this one where Mario and Wario are commanding some slaves to do the Picross puzzles for them, the sick bastards. I like Picross. I also like the idea of Mario and Wario being mascots for their respective puzzle games. They started one of their own in the Japanese exclusive Mario and Wario, which sort of acts like a precursor to the Mini Mario series along with Donkey Kong 94. Anyway, Wario Land 1's a pretty great first entry. It's a pretty solid platformer, and I like it a lot more than Mario Land 2 in terms of gameplay, but there are a few areas of the game that could have been touched up to be even greater. That isn't to say this game lacks any personality, though. Its art direction and character designs definitely carry its charm on its shoulders. I just think with a few revisions, this game could have been greater than it already is. I'll cut it some slack though, since this is the first game and they were only trying to find their footing. Maybe they'll remake this game. There were some rumblings a couple years back of an upcoming return to form for the Wario Land series in the format of remakes for the first 2 games, but nothing's come of those. As is, this game's great to play while you're waiting for your plane to show up in transit on your 3DS. It plants the seeds for its sequels to expand upon its format and introduces an interesting world that can easily be capitalized in potential subsequent games. And that's exactly what they did by Wario Land 2. Fucking you fucking thought! It's Virtual Boy Wario Land, the real sequel to Wario Land 1. Get that Wario Land 2 shit the fuck out of here, bitch!